My name's Sergei Gibson. I've been involved in photography for over 46 years with Gibson's Photography, and as you know, we covered all of Vancouver Island doing school photos and graduation portraits and large group pictures and all that kind of fun stuff. I hope I'm not going to bore you today, but my great-grandfather started in 1880 up and down the coast as a missionary, but also he did a lot of photography too. And over there, if you'd like to look later on, there's quite a few old pictures of Bella Coola, rivers, inlets, all up and down the coast of native villages and totem poles and all that type of thing. In Bella, there's a picture of my great-grandfather hanging in the church there, and I had to go up there a few years ago and do school photos up there. I'd never been there before, and that was quite an eye-opener. I had to stay there for a week because of the way the ferry ran, and so the secretary there, she said, "Would you do some nice pictures of my two boys?" I said, "Sure, we can do that." So I took school pictures during the day and then did family portraits in the evening. And so I took some nice pictures of her two boys and made up some prints, and her husband took me out halibut fishing one day. And so we went out halibut fishing, and we had just hand lines with a cod jig on it. And we fished around and caught about a 14-pound. It was a red snapper. So anyways, it just at that point in time, I had a strike, and we end up pulling it up, and it was a 180-pound halibut. And when it broke the surface, he took his gun and went boom and shot it in the head. I guess it was lucky in a way because we'd never have got it in the boat. They're pretty strong. But that was that little trip about Bella. But over the years, we incorporated the studio in 1896, and in 1909 is when we started doing all the school pictures up and down the island, little one-room schools all over the place. Maybe you're lucky to have a two-room school, but we used the 5x7 view camera. That's that big one there with the red bellows on it, and that was a 5x7 negative. And we made contact prints, and they were 5x7 class pictures. And we started off in 1909 at 25 cents each, and in 1956 they went up to 60 cents. But then shortly after that, color came in, so that was the end of that era. But they were all hand printed. Each the paper came in boxes of 500 sheets from Kodak, and they were called Azo F2 double weight. And we would take a sheet of paper out, put it on the top of the negative, pull the lever down, and figure out 2 or 3 seconds, 4 seconds. You go 1, 2, 3, and lift it up, and then give it to somebody, and they were developing them. And they went from the developer to the shortstop to the hypo. And we used to buy our chemistry in 50-pound sacks and make our own up, mix it ourselves. And that was done for years. And once color came in, it was a different kettle of fish altogether. It was, for the school photos, it was a 100-foot roll of film, and you'd have 1,000 shots on it. So pretty much on a school day, you would never have to change film. You just keep shooting. Sit down, smile, shut up. So that went on and it was all automatically printed. And then once digital kicked in, well, that was a different story altogether. All the photos that were done with the wet process, it was done, finished, and it went into digital. But at that point in time, it would have cost us about $1.75 million to switch over. And we thought, well, we're not a big company. Is it worth it? So this Life Touch is a huge American company, and they were across Canada and through the States too, and they offered us to buy out, and we thought, well, we better sell it or they might kill us with, price structures and whatever else they do. So we sold out to Life Touch, but I still have a son and a daughter-in-law still managing the company for them, for the island and also Smithers area. We did a lot of weddings and family groups too. I've probably attended to more than 5,000 weddings in my career, and Friday night, Saturday, Sundays. So really, sometimes I didn't get a day off for a few months, especially in the summertime. But it was fun. It was a busy time for sure, and we did do a lot of outdoor photography too, family groups and besides the indoor stuff. And we also had a company or like a club like yourself. Ours was called PPABC, which was Professional Photographers of America, or of BC, and it was all the BC photographers would get together and we'd have a meeting once a month, and so oftentimes we'd have a meeting in Victoria or we'd have a meeting in Vancouver, and sometimes a little further north for the northern people. But once a year we'd have one great big convention of everybody that could make it. But it was kind of neat in one way. We'd fly to Vancouver and the cost was $9. So you can tell you how long ago that was. But we'd have conventions and we'd have contests and in photography and give out ribbons and prizes and all that type of thing. And we'd they'd have to be a print about 16 by 20 like that to enter. And one time, my wife was in the dark room and she was printing. We were going to do this picture of this young fella standing there, and it turned out she made some mistakes and forgot to put two color slides in, and so the whole image was light and dark blue, and so we called it the Blue Boy. And that won the prize for the whole convention. And how did you do that? Wow. They never told it was a mistake. But it was quite pretty, actually. And what else can I tell you? Is there any questions at all? Anybody interested in photography and doing that type of thing?
Did your grandfather, who was a missionary and he was a photographer, did he continue being a missionary and still?
For many years, yes. He was up and down the coast for. I never did meet him because he passed away before I was even born. But no, about 25 years, I believe. Wow. Yeah. So, and there's a picture of the ship in there that he traveled on. Yeah, it was a big old wooden, all the way up almost to Alaska. Yes. And, so he saw a lot of pretty wild country.
So his son, your father, took over from?
Well, yes. Actually, yes, he did. Like when my great-grandfather was still in photography to a degree, my grandfather was interested at the time, so he learned from him and dabbled in it, and then in 1896 started his own business, and he only had grade 3 education. In those days you didn't go to school very often, but he ran a business of about 35 people, So they did a lot of, especially during the First and Second War, nobody had cameras, and so everybody wanted pictures, of their soldiers and everybody heading out of the country. And when we were processing, we had 55 people working in our lab. We had it on Glanford Avenue, and we had the color printers and the spotters and the packagers and the printers and it was quite a it was all procedure.
What about on Blandford Avenue, because I grew up in Blandford Avenue?
Oh, we're right next to the main post office.
Oh.
Yeah, There's a big building there, and there used to be a water company on part of it, and we were in the other part. And now there, I believe there's an animal clinic in there. Yeah, so you'll know the building I mean then. Yeah, no, we were there for many years. It's a 2-story building, and we had the studio and the office area in the main floor, and all the lab upstairs. So it worked out pretty good.
So this is a 5-generation?
5 generations, yes. Yeah. So we've got, my wife and I, well, we've been married 61 years now, and we have 3 sons and 4 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren.
Wow.
So we had 4 little girls born in 5 years. That's got to be crazy. It was all boy, and all of a sudden, bam, what happened? But they're fun little things. They're pretty crazy. But
Where did you go to school?
sorry?
Where did you go to school?
I went to Royal, well, first, let's see, I started off in Colwood Elementary, then we moved to Prospect Lake, and I went to Prospect Lake, the old school on West Saanich, that they burnt down at fire practice. Then I went to Royal Oak. I think that's where I met you at, and Nori, and I don't know who else in here. Anyways, we went there. And then I went there only for 1 year, and then I was at Esquimalt before that, high school, and I wasn't too happy at Royal Oak because there wasn't enough in the way of sports projects. So I liked track and field and rugby and soccer, and so I went back to Esquimalt and competed there and graduated from there. But that's a long time ago.
And how long have you had your house on Prospect Road?
Sorry?
How long have you had your house on Prospect Road?
I was 17 years old, and I bought 83 acres at that time, and we're still there. Yeah, but then you can afford things. It was $3,100 the total price. $500.
You built next door, didn't you? You built your new house next door.
Yeah, we built a couple of places there now. Yeah, that's right. But it's funny because everything there now, even little shacks are going for over $1 million. I don't know how they can afford it. It's brutal. Yeah.
You bought 83 acres right on?
It's just above the lake, overlooks the lake, about halfway down Prospect Lake, and if you're going towards Burnside, it's on the right-hand side. And so we run, I have a cattle feedlot there, so we have cattle, and a friend of mine has a slaughterhouse between Duncan and Lake Couch, and then he brings me skinny cows or young cows, and I bring them up to a good size, and then he picks them up and brings me more.
So you still have the 83 acres?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you still have the fish ponds?
Yeah, we do. Although we're having trouble with otters and eagles and things and herons. Yeah. One big trout was about this big swimming around and had a hole right through it, but I guess the heron speared it but couldn't get it out. But it seemed to survive. Yeah. So I don't know if I could give you much more information. I did photograph. There's a picture in there of Pamela Anderson, and it's in a magazine. And I photographed her in Ladysmith when she was in grade 7, I believe, and it shows her in grade 7, and wow, later. But the magazine paid us $1,000 for that image. So sometimes photography pays. But there's also, I did Freddie Fender and Sharlie, Freddie Fender, John Belleville, Princess Alexandra. That was an interesting one. My little son Rob and myself, we had to cover her visit here in Victoria for 2 days, and we had to get RCMP checked and everything like that. We had to wear a tag and then a necklace or whatever you call it. Yeah, dog tag. And we did, hundreds of pictures for the Canadian Scottish Regiment and for the city. But that was pretty interesting. Some of those old pictures there too, we sent the old negatives and slides to Ottawa and gave them to their museum. And I think Victoria has some too. But, if you folks would like to look at them, you're more than welcome to.
Could you tell us what happened to all the negatives for all the last pictures?
Well, we gave them to Ottawa and Victoria, but we made prints first for ourselves, and a lot of them are there now for you to view. Yeah.
Did we find all the Royal Oak pictures that we would?
Those ones. No, we gave them. All the negatives that we had of every school, we gave them back to the schools. So hopefully they put them in their libraries. All the class pictures and things like that.
Those pictures in Royal Oak are all with the Sydney Archives.
Oh, okay.
Royal
Oh,
Oak-
that's
Royal
right.
Oak
Yes.
found in Ken Bergeron, and they found them in a box of stuff there.
Yeah.
And they're all with the Sydney Archives now, so they have the entire
Oh,
set of Royal
oh,
Oak
good.
pictures.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, right. Well, at least they're still around. They're 5x7 negatives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're excellent, they're in excellent shape.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Was it all of them, Diane?
All of them went there, yeah.
Year by year, and some would be whole school pictures, some would be staff pictures,
Yeah,
sports
although-
groups.
Yeah, randomly, I think Ken Bergeron, they were tidying up or something when they were doing the middle school, and they found this box, and inside it were all the pictures.
Oh, yeah. Wow. That's
So
neat.
these
Yeah.
Sydney
Hidden
Archives-
treasure.
Yeah, it was there. Because I've had some printed from there, and they come out just like they were perfectly just
Right.
done.
Well, when we were doing the class pictures all by hand, and they would be, once they hit the hypo, then they'd be left there for so many minutes, and they'd be taken out, and they'd be put in a big tub of water. There would be 2 tubs, and they'd be put in this tub of water, and they would be switched around, and the water would be drained, and then they'd be put in the other tub, and then they'd be going back and forth 16 times before they were put out to dry. So that way all the chemistry left it, so that's why they don't go brown.
They,
You know,
they scan
yeah.
absolutely perfectly.
Oh,
The
good.
old photos like that.
Yes.
And the newer ones, when they first came into color,
Uh-huh.
they are terribly poor to scan.
Oh, I
Not
get,
good at all.
yeah. Well, the color, it just didn't have the staying power, I guess you'd say. Yeah. Well, another thing too with color, if you have a picture hanging on the wall and the sun hits it, it won't be long and it'll be faded.
Yeah.
They fade out, the dyes in the pictures there. Okay,
Because our main interest is Royal Oak, people lived in Royal Oak, the people went to Royal Oak School. One of our projects has been to collect class photos. And getting a really close look at the photos, you see some pretty goofy things that the kids are doing.
tell me about it.
The classic one that was one from Mount View, where fully half class either appears to be or does actually have their eyes closed. So I wonder, can you tell us some of the goofy things you've seen the kids do?
Oh, yes, but I don't know if I should tell you. We had a panorama camera, and it was built in around shortly after 1900, and it was a huge camera, bigger than that, and it would rotate like this, and the film was 6 inches wide and 6 feet long, and you'd get 2 images on it, and we only used it for private schools like Brentwood College, Shawnigan Lake, and St. Michael's, that's right, yeah. But I remember one time, I think it was Brentwood College, yes. We had to set all the chairs and benches up in a semicircle, because if you didn't, it had to be a certain distance away from the lens. And if you had it straight, then the picture would go back this way. So anyways, we get it all set up, and I get the camera aimed at this side here, and I nod to the principal, and he says, yeah, go. So I start the camera up, and it runs on its own, and it rotates around like this. Well, one kid was at this end, and he decided he'd pop down, and he ran around behind the whole group, and he popped up at the other end. So he's at both ends. We sent the proof up, and oh, wow. Something hit the fan, that's for sure. Then another time, we do the whole school groups, and I'd have to get up on the school roof and shoot down at the group there. And you're looking at 400 or 500 people, or 600. It's a huge group. And I'm looking down and say, okay, well, I hold my hand up, so I'm ready to take a picture. So I took these pictures, and I never noticed it, but right in the middle was a boy and a girl, and they're both mooning the camera. I go, okay, now what we do? So, and they were in every. I took 3 shots. They were doing it in every shot. So I said, Principal, well, we can take care of it. You don't want those guys in the picture, do you? He says, no. So we did some artwork and eliminated them totally, so they weren't there at all. But that's just some of the fun things that happen. Yeah. Okay, well, if you folks.
As a child, I can remember being so excited to know that you guys were coming. I mean, that was a big thing for us in those days.
Oh yeah, it's a happy day.
So how much we enjoyed it and how much we appreciated it.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed doing it too.
Oh, yeah.
It was.
So exciting, the picture day.
Yeah. Teachers didn't like it. The kids be that high off the ground.
How many of your kids are doing this now?
Sorry?
How many of your kids do photography?
I've just got, well, just one son is, I have 3 sons, but 2 are in excavating and one is still in photography. And he's not actually taking pictures anymore. He's managing the whole island plus Smithers area. So he's got a lot on his plate, I think they have 15 photographers. So it's quite a job to just schedule everything every day. And if somebody phones in sick, then it's a big panic, or how do you cover it? But that two photographers up in Smithers quit, and Bruce had to fly 2 of the fellows here up there for a week to cover till they could retrain people. Yeah. Shirley.
Sergei, I just wanted to ask you, knowing you for about 47 years, and so when did you start carving?
Oh, I started carving when I was about 10 years old.
Did you?
Yeah.
Was that well hidden?
Yes.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, but.
I saw the bear out in front of your place.
Oh, yeah. Okay, folks, gonna.
I got one question. Do you use chainsaw or all handwork or what?
Oh, well, I use 2 big gas saws. Some of the bars are this long, so it's a pretty big saw, and then down to electric saws, and then into electric grinders, and then hand chisels and little demo grinders and things for putting in eyes and tiddly stuff, eh? But most of the feathers and hair and different things is done with electric chainsaw. But the bigger blocking out, you take a log like this, you cut a slice off it, you do your side image, you take off everything that isn't what it is, you take that away, and then you go to the front, and then you keep going down. But it was funny, one day a couple came up, and I was working on an eagle, and she says, oh, that's nice, it's an eagle. And I said, well, thanks, you recognize it? She said, yes. And then she said, well, what if you make a mistake? Well, I said, I don't really have a problem. She said, well, what do you mean? I just end up with a hummingbird. Yeah.
Didn't you have a mill up there?
Yeah, we had a mill one time, yeah, till the neighbors complained and we had to move it to the reserve.
83 acres and you
Yeah. This is what a lot of you remember over the years this is a 5x7 view camera, and it takes a 5x7 film, and you have film holders, and you put the film one on each side in the dark room, load it up, and it has a silver side on it, and you slide the holder in the back here like that, and then you pull the slide out, and then you take the picture. It usually has a plunger here, and you get it all set up, and you take the picture, and then you put your slide back in, but you turn it to the black side so that you know that it's exposed, so you're not doing double exposures. And so you pull it out, and then you want to take another picture, then you pull it this back again and turn it over and slide it back in. So it's still a little bit tricky, but you know, this was the size of the pictures and the film, the whole thing here. We used to buy sheets of 100 at a time and load them in the dark room. Everything was in the total dark. Sorry?
Does it still work?
I would imagine it would, yeah. Well, this is probably my age, and I still work.
Too much information.
Too much information, right?
How old is it?
Sorry?
How old is it?
This one? It's in the. This was probably the 20s. Yeah, it's all mahogany wood around it, and leather bellows, and brass fittings.
Does it have
There-
is there a viewfinder, or do you just point it the direction you want?
No, you put it on a tripod, and you have a black cloth, and you open the lens up and you view through it. That's why I always wear the black cloths over it to see what you're doing, and you view through and get your image, and then you shut the lens down to f11 or something like that, whatever the light is during the day, and then you take your picture, and then you got to do that again to the next class and so on. Yeah, so it took a bit of time. This one over here is a I think it's a camera that would be put on a tripod for sure, and this is a film holder here, and this took a 100-foot roll of film, and you'd get 1,000 exposures off it. So, and it's all automatic. You view through here, and your trigger release is here, and this camera would advance to the next exposure. You hear it go click, and away it goes, and on it went. And your viewing was through this side here, on this mirror image here. But this was, they're even more modern now. This is a little older one. The new ones now are even, I guess, bigger and better. I don't know. They were probably, that one was probably taken with a newer camera. That image there of a grade 12 student. And this one here is what we do now. This replaced this one. This is 120 film, and this is an old camera that took film. I didn't bring a digital one with me. They were using them, but this would do your class pictures, your groups, and this was a workhorse of the professionals for weddings and family groups too. They used all this format here. So it's quite a difference in size. So, okay.
Well, the Chatterton saga begins in the Orange Free State in Vereniging in South Africa, where Dad, George, was born in 1916. His father was English and his mother was Dutch. And in London, England, where Mum, Kitty Kavanagh, was born in 1917, an only child. Oh, didn't I mention that Dad was one of 12 children? There were 6 boys and 6 girls. And then Mum was an only child. Her little family emigrated to the Gatineau area of Ottawa when Mum was 2. Her father was Anglo-Irish and her mother was English. Mum grew up in the Gatineau area on a small farm, the only English-speaking family in a French-speaking neighborhood. Mum was a good scholar and was encouraged to get her grade 13, which was quite an accomplishment at that time. Dad's family was from a large, prosperous farm. He studied agriculture at the University of Pretoria and Afrikaans University. And we still have his diploma, which always intrigued us because it's all in Afrikaans. He then went on to do postgraduate studies in Cornell University in Iowa, I think it is. But his studies were interrupted by the outbreak of the war. He wanted to join up with the Air Force in Canada. He was posted to a number of bases in Canada, including Ottawa, where he met Mum. They were married, Mum and Dad were married in 1945 in Ottawa, and Drew was born the same year in Ottawa. Dad had also been posted to Victoria, which he loved for its beauty, rich farming land, and temperate climate. Mum and Dad then considered the possibility of settling in South Africa. Their second consideration was to settle in Victoria. Mum was very keen to go to South Africa to live, but Dad convinced her that Canada was a much safer place to raise a family. Hence, they settled in Victoria in a small Veterans Land Act house on 2 acres. I was born in 1947, and followed by Peter in 1948, and so Mum had 3 small children under 5, and then along came the baby, Valerie, in 1954. Mum tells a little story of when Dad was courting her. He told her that he had 5 brothers only. I think he didn't want to overwhelm her being an only child. So he told her that he had 5 brothers only. Mum tells the story of finding out about all of his family. This was one day, sometime after they were married, that Dad solemnly asked Mum to come into the living room and to sit down because he had something important to tell her. She was getting more and more nervous, wondering what the truth might be. And at that time, he divulged that he also had 6 sisters. I think he was sort of forced to doing this because letters started to arrive from Mary and a Mona and a Gertie. And so, and then, as was the custom of the time, Mum was largely responsible for caring for the children and the home. She introduced us to the world of the library, where we spent many happy hours poring over books. Mum also read to us for hours every day. She also dutifully took us to church and Sunday school every Sunday here at St. Michael's, and Drew was an altar boy. In his youth, Dad had been required to attend the strict Dutch Reformed Church twice each Sunday. Hence, he joined us at church only on very special occasions, such as our confirmations. Instead, he stayed at home to prepare a big dinner for us on our return home. I remember sitting in Sunday school, sort of dreaming of the big meal to come. Dad worked as the supervisor of the Veterans Land Act. In that capacity, he worked with many settlers who were farming on the Saanich Peninsula. With his own farming experience and university training, he really enjoyed assisting farmers, offering advice and ideas about new techniques. Drew has fond memories of accompanying Dad when he was very little, accompanying Dad on these visits to these farms when he was still very young. Of the several jobs that Dad had, this one I think remained one of his favorites because he could interact on a one-to-one basis with other settlers. On our own property, we had a very large garden, along with various animals, chickens, ducks, goats, and pigs. We all remember being butted by Herbie the cantankerous goat. Normandy Road was a great neighborhood to grow up in. Children could safely walk down the road to visit their friends. It was fun walking down Normandy and along Pipeline to Royal Oak Elementary. Our parents would drop in to visit with their neighbors. Mum was often hostess to a number of friends and neighbors. I remember being so happy if I could be part of some of these visits. Drew and Peter played with the other boys in the neighborhood, out back as they called it, climbing trees and building tree forts. I also seem to remember spending quite a bit of time at the Harrisons on Old West Road. Their home always seemed so quiet compared to our rather sometimes raucous household. And Mrs. Harrison made the most divine white bread that was so delicious with butter and jam. To my mother's chagrin, I wasn't always happy to leave and go home. Another attraction was the pond that Drew says was where the Canadian Tire store at Broadmead is now. In the summer, we built rafts, and in winters, sometimes the pond froze and we could skate on it. During our time on Normandy, Dad enjoyed being on the school board. Later, he became Reeve of Saanich, now known as the mayor, which he also loved because it was a hands-on, practical sort of position. In 1962, in a by-election, Dad was elected Conservative MP for Esquimalt Saanich. Then in 1963, he was re-elected in a general election. In Parliament, he was a backbencher among a throng who were swept in with the Diefenbaker landslide. Our family joined Dad in Ottawa in October 1963. However, Esquimalt Saanich was Dad's constituency and Normandy Road was our home. We would escape the heat and humidity of an Ottawa summer and return by train to the sea breezes of the island. Mum was quite a shy and private person, and she found being a politician's wife quite stressful at times, I think. But she faithfully and nobly did everything attendant to the role, hosting tea parties, campaigning, and being in the public eye. Being in Ottawa was a tremendous experience and education for Drew, Peter, Valerie, and myself. We met children of parents of different cultures and languages. Our high school offered French, English, German, and Russian. We were also introduced to the study of Latin, which was mandatory, which was quite a challenge. We sat in the public gallery of the House of Commons and learned a lot about how Parliament worked. We especially enjoyed the question period, which was especially exciting when we could see the sparring back and forth of the members. I remember the opening of Parliament which in those days was a splendid affair. Wives, and lucky for me, older daughters, dressed up in evening garb, long dresses, just as if you were going to a ball, and you sat in the House of Commons to listen to the throne speech. Traveling back and forth to and from Ottawa was also a wonderful experience. Went by train. I remember especially sitting in the dome car, marveling at the beauty of the Rockies. I also found the prairie provinces quite fascinating, with their clear skies and clear blue skies and golden wheat. Dad was defeated in 1968 when Trudeau-mania swept the country. He then worked for the provincial government and later in the private sector. It was during that time when a friend and realtor approached our parents and said, "Kitty and George, you deserve a really nice home, and I have one just for you." Hence, they took the plunge and they moved to 2180 Beach Drive across from Willows Beach. Soon the new home drew family and friends into their gracious abode. We grown-up children were amazed that they had actually moved from Normandy Road. It was sometime after Dad's death in 1983 that the road in the newly developed Broadmead area was named Chatterton Way. We have a very sweet picture of Mum at the little ceremony to officially name the road. Things have come full circle now. Drew now lives at the Memorial Lodge in Broadmead on Chatterton Way.